showing up the populist era. And that is a reform era. It's number one word that we're going to be focusing on is reform. Now, I want you in your brain to think about, what does that mean? Reform, okay? To reform literally means to change for the better. That's on your notes. And when you think about the progressive era, I want you to circle the root word. I underlined it on your notes. I want you to circle it. Progress. Now, out beside that, I want a little arrow. And you've got to think about something. Who is it going to be progress for? The people. Progressive, fixing things, making them better for the people. It's time to fix the problem of the Gilded Age. And you remember, gilded means gold covering crap, right? Well, that's what we need to do, is we need to fix it. So this era is going to be, and you might want to get this time period down, 1890 to 1920. Now, your very first slide, go ahead and you know what to do. Pause this, get it down, then listen. So populists are going to be more of the rural area, or the country area is what you want to maybe write down. So / country. Progressives are your more urban city folk. Populists were poor and uneducated, my farmers. Remember the Scarecrow in The Wizard of Oz? While progressives are your middle class and educated people. So circle that and make sure you star that. Middle class and educated. So they're going to have a little bit more of a voice in the government. Populists are very radical. You know, they wanted bimetallism is something you might want to write out beside there. So arrow beside by radical, but bimetallism. They were going to inflate the economy. Where progressives are a little bit more mainstream. They know things need to be fixed, but they really want to get it done in a gradual way, in a way that would help a lot of people. The populists failed. William Jennings Bryan, progressives will succeed. And the populists really kind of did give birth to the progressives, if you will. Now, this is something we already talked about, but pause it, get it down. This is the Pendleton Act, a real quick review. It attacked the patronage spoils system put in place, probably, as you remember, by Jackson. It's been going on all the way to William Boss Tweed and all these other corrupt political bosses. Government jobs are given to supporters. This act starts what we call civil service reform. I underline that, but start. This is where the president or other government officials fill the jobs with who they want to, who gives them money. And that's not fair, because if you're my brother-in-law and you gave me money and I make you Secretary of Education and you don't even have a high school degree, we got a problem, okay? It spoils the system. And of course, to make sure you're educated, now the Pendleton Act says you have to take a civil service exam to get a job. And that's what it does. It attacks the spoil system. It wants to reform it, changing it to make it better. Now, this is a new one, so pause this one, get it down, and listen carefully. All right, so this is something versus something. So we're talking about a court case, right? Thanks, Marbury versus Madison, judicial review. Wabash is going to sue the state of Illinois. Now, railroads, as you know, had been charging lower shipping rates for large corporations like Rockefeller's Oil. Illinois laws began to regulate the railroad rates. Remember, that means putting rules on these railroad rates. Now, because of this court case, Wabash versus Illinois, okay, it's going to go all the way up to the Supreme Court, and Wabash Railroad wants to sue the state of Illinois because it's going to try and tell them, and you need to underline, Illinois can't restrict rates on traffic between states. What ends up happening is they actually agree with Wabash Railroad. This is ironic. You got to listen carefully, okay? The Supreme Court says, you're right, Wabash Railroad. Illinois can't regulate you, but the federal government can, and they institute the Interstate Commerce Commission, also known as the Interstate Commerce Act, and it's going to say all rates have to be, here it is, fair and reasonable. Fair and reasonable. Circle, star, highlight, do whatever you need. And remember, interstate commerce is, what is it? Business. So this means that there is an end to laissez-faire. Big old massive capital letters outside the slide. End to laissez-faire. Now here's the topic we haven't been talking about a lot since Reconstruction. To segregate. What does it mean? Flipping your page. To segregate means to separate. So pause this slide, get it down. Now, progressives did not believe it was right for civil laws to dictate how society treats people. You got to think about this. Progressives, again, I want you to just write that word down, circle progress. Would somebody who wants progress want segregation? No. But it also is still the early 1900s, late 1800s. So in the South, there's still Jim Crow laws. There's still loopholes in the 15th Amendment, poll tax, literacy tests, grandfather clauses. And so what the progressives want is they want to change that, and they kind of want to flip it in favor of the African Americans. They want progress. Remember that word, progress for the people. So progressives actually are going to pass the Civil Rights Act of 1875 that are just going to prohibit keeping people out of public places based on race, but the Supreme Court actually, you need to star this and highlight it down here at the bottom, big unhappy face, overturned the act in 1883, opening the door to legalize segregation again. So the progressives try and fix segregation. They are unsuccessful with that, which is going to lead to more poll taxes. This is a really cool, actually, picture right here. A lot of you may have Mrs. Triplehorn. This was her, I believe, her grandmother's poll tax receipt from 1893, great-grandmother's poll tax receipt. People would have to pay to vote. Not awesome at all. It would really not only hurt your lower income, but a lot of your African Americans. Of course, there's going to be kickback. This isn't even a slide, but I put her in. A woman named Ida B. Wells is going to attempt to reform lynching. There's the word right there, lynching. She's going to write a book titled The Red Record, and it's going to attack the horrors of lynching. I don't know if you guys know what lynching is, but it's literally hanging people for entertainment. If you see these pictures, I mean, look at these people. They are gathered here for entertainment, and it's the most disgusting thing in the world, but that's a lot of what used to happen. Lynchings 1890 to 1920. You'll notice where's most of it? The South, of course it is. Remember, 1877, Reconstruction pulled out. All the troops were removed, and the South will rise again. Now, this court case, this is going to help the South rise again, unfortunately. Pause it, get it down. All right, Plessy versus Ferguson, massively important, major star, probably one of the top 5 important court cases in American history, but not for a good thing, so big unhappy face. There's this guy named Homer Plessy. He's 1/8 African American. He intentionally is going to sit in the wrong section of the train to be arrested to prove a point that he should be allowed in the other parts of the train. Because remember, public places are, what's it mean to separate? Segregated. So what happens is Homer Plessy puts himself in the wrong section of the train just to see if they'll remove him. And by God, they do. The Supreme Court is going to hear this case because he's going to then sue, the railroad company. And the Supreme Court upholds the Louisiana law requiring that he had to sit in another section of the train. Now, here's what ends up happening. Plessy loses. And by the way, does this sound familiar to you? Somebody sitting in the wrong section of a transportation? Rosa Parks, right? This is where Rosa Parks got her playbook, by the way. That might be a good quiz question for you. Is Homer Plessy. He takes it to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court says, yeah, it's okay that you have to sit in another place. Are you kidding me? That is the most racist thing there is. The Supreme Court of the United States just said separate is okay as long as it's equal. So there are 3 words in particular I need you to highlight, circle, star, anything, all of the above. This is the court case that creates the ruling separate but equal. It establishes a legal basis for discrimination for the next 50 to 60 years in the South. Plessy versus Ferguson, 1896 is the year. You might want to add that in. Turn of the century. Now, because of Plessy versus Ferguson, some of these images are going to be very commonplace. We wash for white people only. Restrooms, white, colored. Do any of these look good? They're familiar? This cartoon points out the real flaw. What of the 3 words, separate but equal, isn't true? Obviously the equal. They separated them, but it was never equal. Plessy versus Ferguson, this social reality. This is going to be like if you've ever seen the movie The Help, anything like that. Remember the Titans. This is the reality. This is where this comes from, is this court case. Plessy versus Ferguson. Separate but equal. Now, how do you fix segregation? kind of a good image there. You've got Black Codes, Plessy versus Ferguson, and Jim Crow laws on one side. The other side is 13, 14, 15. Obviously good versus bad. Which way will the scale tip? There's two men you've got to know about and how they want to overcome segregation. One of them is a guy named Booker T. Washington. Now with that, I want you to make sure that you pause this and get it down because he's very important, his approach. Now, this view, Booker T. Washington, is the Southern perspective. He was a former slave. I need you to make sure you circle this, and he writes a book called Up from Slavery. He is the founder of the Tuskegee Institute, but here is his philosophy. The bottom part of the slide is the most important, so circle it. He comes from the South, where segregation, slavery was a way of life. So he does not believe that you should confront segregation head on. He says, this is going to be controversial, but he says, before you're considered equal in society, you must be self-sufficient. Circle that. And so with that, he stresses that all African Americans should be vocationally educated. So this is not a term you're used to hearing, vocationally educated. So circle the word vocational. Then below it, little arrow, job training. So what Booker T. Washington says is, look like you deserve your rights, have money in your pocket, then go ask for them. He said you need to look the part to get your rights. You can't just go up and be like, hey, give me my rights. It's not going to work that way. So he said if you approach it in the right manner, then you're more likely to get your rights. However, there is going to be another aspect to it. Last part of the slide. Pause it, get it down. He says that you should do it gradually. Okay? That's the word you want to start on this slide. He said, let it happen over time. Do you think many African Americans in the 1890s, after they were already freed 30 years later, want to wait longer to get rights? So there's going to be another aspect to it. A man named W.E.B. Du Bois, and he's going to be a Harvard professor, very educated, upper class, from the North. You notice that Booker T was from the South. Well, Du Bois is from the North. Oh no, here we go. There's where we needed to be. So here's Du Bois. Pause it, get it down. There we go. Now, how do African Americans overcome segregation? In Du Bois' personal opinion, you should just ask for them, and ask for them now. He's going to be founder of the NAACP, which we know as the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. He'll fight for immediate black equality. He says that basically the talented top 10% of African Americans should be left in power positions, and they can break into the power structure. I'm going to be real honest with you. Du Bois says you shouldn't have to earn your rights. Just go get them. Ask for them. Demand them. Every single day, demand them. And that's the end of the story. He comes from the North, where segregation wasn't as prevalent and racism was still there, but not as bad as the South. You have two different men coming from two different time periods and two different areas of the country. Interesting to see their perspectives on it. Now, the last two slides, I'm going to go ahead and let you pause and get down. Okay, political reforms. I want you to circle the word political, put government. This is going to be government direct primaries, initiatives where citizens can introduce laws, referendums where laws have to be submitted to voters. Y'all remember when the ballpark was just submitted, or the ARC a long time ago. We voted that one down. There's also recall elections, government recall elections that come during the progressive era. That's where we can recall a public official out of office in a special election if they don't please us. And also, of course, direct election of 7 senators, which is the 17th Amendment. This is when senators are elected by the people, not by just some rich guy putting them in office. The last slide right here, pause it, get it down. This is also where the 19th Amendment comes in, women's suffrage, child labor reform, workers' safety, and the 18th Amendment, which will be prohibition, which is, of course, the illegal manufacture and transport of alcohol. All of these are going to be termed progressive political reforms, okay, and very, very important to this chapter. So tune in for the next one.